Okay, so today we're going to start by Darash Rabavira, which is on Zion Amud Aleph, towards the bottom. It's
Right, six lines up.
6 lines up, and I hope to get, if you have to leave early, I hope to get to Ches Amud Beis by the Tanur Rabbana in the middle of the page.
Oh, good. So we'll be
Today's supposed to be tough. So, all right.
okay. Thank you.
See how it goes, but okay. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day, and in this chus of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. So we start like this. Do I see a bracha already? No. Starts like this. Darash Rabavira. Rabavira taught. Sometimes he said it over in the name of Rabami, sometimes he said it over in the name of Ravasi. I guess they both taught the same teaching. Well, my diksiv. What is the meaning of the pasuk? Kayamar Hashem, so says Hashem. Im shleimim b'chein rabim b'chein nagoyzu va'avar. What is the meaning of this pasuk? Whether they are sufficient, whether they're complete, they're sufficient, and they're many, and so they will be sheared and pass away, possibly. What is the meaning of that pasuk? So the Rav Avira taught, if a person sees that his food is limited, he doesn't have a lot of income, yasimem tzedakah, he should give tzedakah. Even though he doesn't have so much, he should still give tzedakah. But kolshken kshem ribim, for sure, if he has a lot, for sure he should give tzedakah. Someone told me, it says, it's in Menachos, it says it doesn't matter if you bring a big carbon or a small carbon, as long as your intention is for the sake of heaven. Someone was saying that the guy that gives the small one, the poor guy, for sure his intention is for the sake of heaven. But the Mishnah was teaching you that even the wealthy guy, he can also fulfill what the poor guy is fulfilling as long as his intention is also for the sake of heaven. It's the opposite of the way you usually understand it. Even the marbe could be also yaitze if he's machafen. Yes. Okay. Anyway, for sure you should be giving tzedakah. What does it mean? He be sheared or cut down and pass away or pass. Tana de Rabbi Shmuel was taught in the yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel. Anyone that shaves off part of his possessions, like he cuts down from his possessions and gives them for tzedakah, saved from the punishment in Gehenna. What does that have to do with shearing? Nagaiza means to shear. And I teach this in the yeshiva, so I tell them that the word nagaizu is zzz, which is the machine that you should remember what it means. So mashal shtei recheles is an example of 2 sheep. So you're they were passing through some water. Achas gazuz v'achas ein gazuz. One of them had the wool was sheared off already, and one of them was not gazuzah. They have these pictures of these sheep. It's like you can hardly see them. They're like loaded with gazuzah averes avra. The one that was sheared can make it through the water, but shein gazuzah avra, the one that wasn't sheared doesn't make it through. That's what it means. That what you do is you give tzedakah, whether you have sufficient or whether you have a lot, whether it's just enough, whether you have a lot, you give tzedakah. When you shear off, you'll pass through. It means you'll pass through. It means you won't have to go to Gehenna. It's not pass away, but you'll pass through. Like the sheep that passes through the river. By giving tzedakah. V'inisicha, is it v'inisicha, v'inisicha? Let's spell v'inisicha, and I will afflict you. Cause you're suffering, right? Mazurcha says, we're on top of the Zion Amud Beis. Even an ani, even a poor person that's being supported from tzedakah, he himself should give tzedakah. So he goes to the like soup kitchen or whatever, and he gives some of that away. He himself needs, he's collecting, but he still should give. Le'an cha'id, I won't afflict you anymore. Tani Rabbi Yosef taught Shuvin Maran Le'siman Enias. Then he won't be shown signs of poverty. He himself gives tzedakah. Yeah. Why tzedakah will help? No, I saw once in the Maral. The Maral says that your real wealth is only wealth. Anything that you feel that you can't spend is not real wealth. If you can't give it away, it's like, because it's already tied up. So the only real wealth that you have is what you can give away. How do we know that you can give it away? When you give it away. A wealthy person, that's why it says Kol Nadiv Leiv Yiviyah. It says Kol Nadiv Leiv. Maral explains why doesn't say Usher based on the wealth. It says no, because the wealth is the generosity. That is a person's wealth. This becomes wealthy. Yeah. Yeah. The Gemara doesn't say that exactly, but I'm reading that in. Yeah. Right. That's what they normally say. The only thing when there was this with Moses Montefiore, the queen or whoever it was, asked that, how much are you worth? They said a certain amount. They said, really, I'm worth much more than that. So he said, no, that's the tzedakah that I gave. That's what I'm worth. It says that they shaved off the hair, so then it can pass, then it can get through. Like the sheep that can't make it through the river because there's too much hair on it. That was the mashal. Okay, you have to look in the mashal and the commentaries and Ben Yada to see if there's more there.
Yeah. I know that Ben Ishai has something like that. You're saying Ben Yada, where it's like if Ben Ishai said if you have 5 birds and you shoot down 2, how much do you have? And they'll say, oh, 3. No, you have 2. So the 2 that you shot down are the ones that you have, and the other ones flew away. So same thing with tzedakah. Like the ones that you gave away, those are the ones that you actually have.
Very nice. Okay, now we go back to the actual Mishnah where we were talking about the borders of Eretz Yisrael. He said that Rechem was the border to the east, and Akko was the border to the north, and Ashkelon was the border to the south, and the border to the west was the Mediterranean, which we didn't say in the Mishnah. But the Gemara now says, Rav Yehuda, we quote the Mishnah. Rav Yehuda says from Rechem is the border to the east. The Memra and etc. You have to look at this. Etc. was Akko is to the north. The Memra is this to mean the Akko, the Tzvaina, the Yisrael Kaima, that Akko is the north of Israel. But we have a contradiction. If someone is walking from Akko to Kaziv, you may get a little confused if you're using other commentaries on this, because there's different versions to this Gemara. But I'm just going to read it as it says it here and the way it seems to be explained by Rashi. Someone is walking from Akko to Kaziv. Sounds like he's walking north. Miyaminai, on his right side, Lemizrach, is the east. That makes sense? He's walking north. The right side is going to be his east. Lemizrach Haderach, to the east of the path, is Tameya. It's going to be considered outside of Israel. Mishum Eretz Amim, because it's considered not Israel. So we're talking about Akko must be on the the northeast, on the northeast of Israel. He's walking even more north. Sorry, where was he walking? He's walking from Akka to Ksiv. Okay, so 1 second. So Mimina leMizrach Haderech is Tmeya, Mishamer Tzameh, Ptur Min HaMaisa. And it's considered Tameh because it's not considered Israel. And it's exempt from Meiser because it's not considered Israel. And Min HaShviyas, and it doesn't have Shviyas because it's not considered Israel. It's totally not Israel. Unless you know for sure that it is Israel. In other words, if you know that maybe the border of Israel or the path that you're on doesn't go in a straight path, then if you know for sure that it is Israel, then it is. Otherwise, it's considered outside of Israel. Mismaila, what about on the other side? L'mayra v'derech. L'mayra v'derech is tahira. Mishamer Tzamen. It's pure from the land of the nations. There was a decree that the Gentile lands were considered tamei. I think we had two reasons there. One was because maybe they weren't careful with how they buried things. The other one was just a decree, so as not to go. I forget where we learned this. We learned this a few months ago. So whatever the case is, that's considered Israel. So it's pure. V'chayeves b'maiser, and you have to take maiser. Maiser is the tithe. B'shviyas, and you have to keep the laws of shviyas there, which is shmita. Unless you know that clearly this is not Israel. Ad hechan, how far does this go? Ad kaziv, goes until kaziv. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi says the name of his father, which his father is obviously Rabbi Yossi. He says until Lav Levai, until the place of Lav Levai. So right here we have a question, because the Mishnah says that the northern border of Israel is Akko. And then we have this other Mishnah, or a Brisa, it's a Tosefta, this Tosefta that says that the northern border of Israel is Kaziv. Tosefta is the same era of the Mishnah, but it just wasn't put into the Mishnah. Tosefta means like addendum, added on.
A Brisa is always added into it.
So the Brisa includes Toseftas. Word Brisa just means outside.
Okay.
Anything that's outside the edited Mishnah is called a Brisa. Could be a Tosefta, it could be other Brisas. Tosefta means that it's added. So the Mishnah was made by Rabbi Danasi. He edited it. The Brisas were edited by Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Sheh. So we have a contradiction. Is it Akko that's the north, or is it Kaziv, which is the north? Where do we have Kaziv in Tanakh? Someone was in Kaziv when they gave birth. Is that by Tamar or something? Maybe Tamar. Anyway, Amar Abaya Ritzua Nafka. It's not a problem, because if Israel would be a square or a rectangle, so I can create a northern border by just listing one city, and that goes, but there may be a strip of land that's going out from, but that's not telling me. So Kaziv would be the strip of land that's going out, but Akka would be the main border that tells me the rest of the area. Follow? So that's why you could tell me the border is Akko, and it still tells me that there's another place called Kaziv, which is also the border, because even though that's more north. Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out based on, if you have a traditional Gemara, you have a Rashi. So they don't put the north on the top, they put north on the side. But if you turn your Gemara like this, you have north on the top. So it shows how you're walking on a path from Akko to Kaziv, and then you'll have, you see what's going on there? This is Akko here. Here's a path, he calls this a Ritzua, a strap. Yeah, a strap, and then there's Kaziv up there. So Akka would be the main border of Israel, which goes along, and then Kaziv is more north. Yeah. Okay. The Gemara asks, "V'yav Tana Simana Hachi." Is that the way the Tana would write? It would give a sign of a little strip, and it would talk about that there's one strip that goes out. That's the way Rashi learns. Tosfos says that what the Gemara is asking here is, would it use a path to be considered a border of Israel? I mean, can you actually trust the say that the road to the east of this road is going to be Israel? Sounds like, are we really that sure that the road is the road that the road is going to stay the road? That you're going to give a border based on a road? You know, but what it's saying is, saying if you look to the right, then you're going to be your pater from Maisa. If you look to the left, you're chayiv in Maisa. Now, can you really use a road to tell me that such an important piece of information? That's the way Taisvus, I think. Right, the border. Can you use the border as can you just say a road is the border? You know, maybe the road moves. I don't know. Anyway, it says you could do that because Kranami of Simana. You even have a pasuk that uses the road as a border. That's the way Taisvus would say it. According to Rashi, we would say we even have a pasuk that gives me a little strip of land that's considered an extension from the border. It says the Ksiv Vayomro Hine Chag Hashem B'Shila Miyamim Yamima Shemitzvayna LeBeiskal Yizrach Hashem LeMesila Ayla MeBeiskal Shchema Minegav LeLevina. Okay, the pasuk. It's not so significant what's going on, but it turns out that it was a continuation from yesterday's story about the Pilegesh Begiva, that there was no women left for the tribe of Binyamin to marry. Whoever was survived from Binyamin, I think there were 400 men or something. So they after a battle with Yavish Gilad, said you can take whatever women are left from Yavish Gilad, Binyamin could marry them, because they made this vow that no one was allowed to marry with Binyamin. So then they said that they told the people of Binyamin that there's going to be this festival. It's going to be in Shiloh. It's every year. Now Shiloh happens to be, the pasuk says, north of Beiskel, towards Shechem. It's on the path, on the eastern side of the path, which goes from Beiskel to Shechem, south of Lebanon, south of Lebanon. So that description, and then what it says is that at this festival, the men of Binyamin would go snatch women and keep them as wives. That's how they would. That tribe would continue. But it gives me a path, and it tells me the border of. It gives me a description with this little strip that's going up from Beiskel. Rav Papa says the Mizracha Shel Mesila. What it means, Mimizrach Shemesh, the Mesila means it's on the eastern side of the path. You see, either the Torah tells me the border with a little strip that extends, or the Torah tells me the border is a path. Okay, now we go back to Gittin. Tani Chada, one brisa taught, Hamevi get bisfina, Kamevi beretz Yisrael. If someone brings a get, he writes the get on a boat. Now, we think now that what we're talking about is that we're on a boat in a river in Israel. Are there rivers in Israel? Well, the Jordan would be the border of Israel. Let's say there's some other rivers in Israel. Huh? What is that? Isn't Jordan the main border? Oh. Yeah, but here it sounds like we're talking about a river in Israel proper.
There's a river called Nahal Gziv.
Oh, is that a river? And
maybe it's modern day. Yeah, but yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Oh, okay. It could be this river. So if someone's on a boat in one of these rivers and he writes a get. Now we have differences between a get that's coming from outside of Israel to a get that's coming inside of Israel. So the rule is, it says in this brisa, Kimevi beretz Yisrael, it's in Israel. Tani Yidach, you have another brisa that says Kimevi b'chutz la'aretz. It says if you brought this get was outside of Israel because it wasn't on the ground in Israel, it was on the water, which was raised from the ground. Maybe that's not considered Israel. The Tosfos over here says, if you look at the Tosfos, in the middle of the Tosfos says Vim Taimar. Manyan get till meister. So maybe get Baliyah Beit Shal Yichashiv maybe Chaslites Mishum Dafer Abasha Mechutz Parts Minamais. Taisa says, what are you talking about? If you have a get, if you write a get in the attic, so it's as if you're not in Israel. Is that what you mean? That it needs to be on the ground in Israel to be Israel? But if you're on the second floor, it's not. Yeah, anyway. Says the attic is different because it actually has the ground under it. But over here, you're in a boat. Under it is water. Maybe that's not considered the land of Israel. Well, let's see in a minute. We'll see a little bit more about that. But meanwhile, we have a contradiction. It is Israel, or it's not Israel. That's a contradiction. I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah like Kasher. Rabbi Yirmiyah says it's not a question. Why is it not a question? How do you answer contradictions? You answer contradictions with two possible ways in the Gemara. Either you say it's a machlekes, or you say that they're talking about different cases. That's what Rav Papa does. Rav Papa would answer. So here, Rabbi Yirmiyah is going to answer. He starts off saying that it's not a contradiction because it's a machlekes. Ha Rabbi Yehuda, ha Rabbanan. Where is this machlekes? Titanan. It's a Mishnah in Chala. It says, "Offer chutz la'aretz above besvina the eretz." It's right. It's about taking challah from dough. Dirt from chutz la'aretz that's in a boat, and you grow something in that boat, in that dirt. So that came to Israel. It's in the boat that came to Israel. It's a chayiv b'maiser b'shviyas. It's chayiv. It's considered Israel. You have to take meiser, you have to tithe, and it has the laws of Shemitah. Mamish Israel. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, "Amasai, when do you say this? That's only if it's one of these boats that's being dragged along the seabed, the riverbed. But if the boat is not being dragged, the boat is floating, then it's exempt, which means it's chutz la'aretz. So it would need to actually be on the ground. Rashi added in this detail that the boat is also made out of clay. Somehow makes it into good. How does it? Is there such thing as a clay boat?
Yeah, it's like a ship.
I'll find out. Dr. Stein, tell us if they had clay boats back then.
Boats are made of lightweight material.
Right.
I think like ceramic.
Did they have clay boats back then?
I know in China they have cement boats.
Really?
Floated, yeah. Heavy and they're big. Float.
Like a jug.
Yeah, it does have to do with the surface, with the
I was in there.
It's not cement.
The
It's
Forbidden City,
it's
they have
ceramic.
floating, like a barge. Back to all the waste of the cities, they are put on cement barges and wood. Because they want, not wood. When does it float? Depends on the area.
It's
Horses are, you know,
Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
If you learn new things every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it sounds like.
Iron floats too. It's called a ship.
But then, right, that's what it sounds like. So he's asking if you take soil from Eretz Yisrael and you bring it to Chutz La'aretz, would it be chayiv and meiser? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Sounds like it should be the same thing.
So how are we getting to this discussion about like the area of Eretz Yisrael? Is it talking about the idea of having witnesses,
Right, exactly.
So now it's getting into the boundaries.
Right. Exactly. Rabbi Yehuda says that's only if the boat is dragging along the ground. But if the boat is not dragging along the ground, then it's pater. So what happens here is the Tanna Kama held that it's automatically considered Israel because the river is in Israel. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, it depends. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says that, okay, So the contradiction is the Tanakh, the one that said Israel is the Tanakhama, the one that said Chuslar, it's Rabbi Yirmiyah, because it wasn't dragging on the ground. Abaya Amar,
Don't we know what the borders are, like?
yeah, we know what the border is. But now we're talking about if someone is on a boat and he's writing a get, is he considered in Israel or not?
Oh,
Because he's not on the ground in Israel.
do they use this, I guess, SEFTA or like when it applies to traveling with plane these days, whether or not they're,
Are they in Israel?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the same, you would have to figure out from this how it applies to a plane, but 1 second, we're going to get to another detail here. Abaya says, Hava Rabbi Yehudi. Why do I have to say that it's, we're on 7b? Yeah. In Gittin.
Yeah, but Chazal, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me get to it.
You don't know if you have any extra ones. All right, on their way. On their way. Yeah.
What do we do with the extra tomorrow?
You put them on the shelf, so I want to learn them. No.
Downstairs?
Okay. So Abaya says, Rabbi Yehudi. If you notice, Rabbi Yehuda himself said that it depends. So it depends. So what does it depend on? If it's floating on the water, or if it's being dragged on the ground? So we have a simple teretz. Depends. Is it floating? Then it's not Israel. If it's on the ground, then it is Israel. Amar Reb Zera says, he adds on to this discussion, he says, according to this, if I have a atzitz nakav, it's a flower pot with a hole in the bottom. But I put it on a stand. So it's not directly on the ground. The flower pot with the hole in the bottom is basically growing on the ground. Let's say I put it on a stand, it's raised. So Abaya says, Reb Zera says, according to this, it's going to be a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda in the Rabbanan if it's considered growing in Israel. They have these raised things to make it not Shemitah. So Reb Zera says, it's a machlekes. Amar Rava says, maybe it's not a machlekes. Maybe they both agree. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan would agree to this. 1 second, but when it came to the boat, they had a machlekes. The Rava says a boat is different than a flower pot. Why? Even though both of them are floating, are raised. Because Dilma Ad Kan like Rabbi Yehuda. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say over there that if it's floating, it's not considered Israel? Because over there it's moving. It's not just that it's floating, it's also moving. So now we're on top of Ches. So when it's moving, it's not considered Israel. But the flower pot, which it's not usually moving, is going to be Israel, even though it's raised. Inami, or I could say the opposite. Why did the rabbi say that the boat is considered Israel, even though it's floating, it's raised off the seabed? That's because because there's no air between. And the water is considered just part of Israel. The water is the water of Israel. It's still Israel. The water is just like a thick earth. It's like the foam on top of the earth. It's the earth. It's still earth. It's the mapsik avira, but if you have airspace in between, then that's already not Israel. Maybe it's exactly the opposite. Maybe by the flower pot, everyone would agree that it is Israel because it's stationary. Maybe by the flower pot, everyone would agree that it's not Israel because there's air in between. So it's not really a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Which way does it go? I don't know. But Reb Zera claimed it's machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Who is this? Rabba says not necessarily. Yeah, but if you look at, so 1 second. So when you go into the boat, you're going from one place to another place. So only the water moved and you just get out and you're in the same place.
Such thing, I didn't think it was like logical.
No, that's talking about the energy that's how the boat is moving. Is it the boat that's moving, or is it water that's moving, and the boat is stationary on the moving water? So it's considered. So I get what you're saying. You're saying that why did Rava say that the boat is moving? It's not Israel. It's really the water that's moving. The boat is stationary on the moving water. Interesting question. Very nice.
There's something separating, so underneath that is not like directly over the ground.
Okay, right,
Part
right,
hovering
right.
over a table and then the ground is beneath.
For biblical laws, are you allowed to water it on Shabbos?
I
Yeah.
don't think it's
Right.
never allowed. It's never allowed. But I think it just mentioned that there's something in between the hovering part and the plant. It's not considered attached to.
For what laws would that be relevant to?
I think it's maybe when you're gonna move it.
Okay. For so what do they do? Oh. Uh-huh. Okay. But
Question.
Yeah.
You said that it's soil from Eretz Israel and it's abroad. That's considered Eretz Israel?
yeah, that was Tivi's question. Yeah. Do you have an answer to that?
No, but the reverse. What if you bring soil from abroad and you put it in Eretz Israel? Is that, and you grow stuff in
That
farms?
becomes Eretz Yisrael.
And the other soil in Hutzlaritz doesn't become Hutzlaritz, it stays Eretz Israel soil.
Soil from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah,
Soil
reverse.
from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz.
Right.
I assume it's Chutz La'aretz, but I didn't read that clearly.
Oh, it becomes Hutzlaritz.
Yeah. If the comparison is correct, then it should be Chutz La'aretz.
It's not correct.
I'm sorry. What we're working over here on is like how we're getting into this. Is that the laws of Gittin in Israel are different than the laws of Gittin outside of Israel. So we started discussing. Let's say someone's on a boat in Israel. Is he considered in Israel, or is he considered not in Israel because he's on the boat? So we're about to say now. It depends where it is. But before we were saying even if it's in Israel proper, maybe he's not really in Israel because he's on the boat. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, "B'naharis Eretz Yisrael kulam lepligi." When it comes to
So many questions and answers.
when it comes to rivers in Israel, you're for sure in Israel. Even if you're on a boat, everyone agrees Israel is Israel. It doesn't have to do with if you're floating or whatever. Elaki pligi b'yam hagadol. We're not talking about in Israel. We're talking about the Mediterranean. Boats in the Mediterranean, are they in Israel or not? Well, the Tanya was taught in a brayse says, what's considered land of Israel? What's considered outside the land? This is already a big discussion. You go swimming. Did you leave Israel? How far out are you allowed to swim if you don't want to leave Israel? No. Kol sheshefei aviyard mituri amnain v'lifnim Eretz Yisrael mituri amnain v'lachutzes chutzlaretz. What you do is like this. What you do is you'd go into the Mediterranean and you'd look north, you'd see the mountain of Amnain, and then you draw a line down from the mountain of Amnain, and that line would be your border, even though you're in the water already, but that would be your border. And then what comes out is it says Hanasin Shabayam, that if there's islands in the sea, then Rayanai site. What you do is you see you make a line from Mount Amnain, which Rashi tells us is Har Har, not the Har Har that Aaron passed away on, because that's on the other side. This is Har. There's a second Har Har, which is in the northwest of Israel, and you would draw a line down from there to the river of Egypt. The river of Egypt, the Nachal Mitzrayim, is either the Suez, right, or the Wadi. I saw in a sefer that the Suez was connected. Even before they made it connected by man. It was originally connected, and then it was blocked, and then they redid it. Sorry. Yeah. So, but it's probably not. It's probably the Wadi, or maybe Nachum Mitzrayim means the Nile. I don't know. Whatever the case is. Yeah. Because now we're saying that Israel even goes into the Mediterranean, and I just have an imaginary line that goes down from the mountain down to, and that's going to include even the islands that are out there. Okay, that's this first opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says no, that's not how the land of Israel works. That's not how the Mediterranean is viewed. Rabbi Yehuda kol shekeneged Eretz Yisrael, re'uk Eretz Yisrael, shneimar v'gvul yam, v'yelachem hayam hagadol, v'gvul zeh yelachem gvul yam. This border, the border of the west, this will be for you the Great Sea, and this border will be for you the border of the west, which means that what you do is like this. According to him, let's read a little further. Banasin shebetzadim, the islands that are on the side, Raina sekiluchut matach aleim mikapluria, va'ad yam ukianis, minachal mitzrayim, ad yam ukianis, menachut v'lefnim Eretz Yisrael, menachut v'lachutz v'chutz l'Eretz. What he wants to do is like this. He wants to say that I look at Israel, I take the northern tip of Israel and the southern tip of Israel, and then I move across the Mediterranean. I consider all the water of the Mediterranean to be Israel, if it's within the north and south of the borders of Israel, which means it's going to go until. Are they taking it past?
Yeah, all the way to the Great Sea.
They're taking it into the Atlantic. Now, what happens in the Atlantic? I guess it stops there.
You go across the Atlantic all the way
Does
to
it
the
go?
Bahamas.
Does it go across the Atlantic as well?
It doesn't show it on the map.
No, it just goes until what is that place? What is the tip? Gibraltar? What is that?
Oh, no, this is beyond.
What is this place called? What is this
Straits of
Straits of Gibraltar? But it goes a little past there as well. It goes to the end of the continent.
So,
So Rabbi Yehuda has a different view. So
Down
according,
in Cyprus, is in Israel,
yeah, I don't know, is Cyprus more north? No, Cyprus is,
more north, but not the way they.
yes, so Cyprus would be in Israel, according to Rabbi
yeah.
Yehuda.
So it's southern Italy, tip of it.
Yeah, Sicily.
All these-
Yeah,
Also, all of North Africa. Wow. South of Spain.
right.
So it's Israel.
Sicily too.
It's something against Sicily.
Okay, so
This is not a prevailing opinion, obviously.
no.
But it makes for good week.
So what would come out is like this. How are we getting into this? Because we had a contradiction between if someone brings a get on a boat, is he considered in Israel? Is he not in Israel? So according to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, if you're within the border of Israel, then let me take a look. Let's see what happens.
Oh, so he doesn't have to say.
Right. The one that says that we're talking about you're on a boat and you're out there in the Mediterranean. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're going to be in Israel, because Rabbi Yehuda says that all of that land in the Mediterranean, all of that area is considered Israel. And according to the other opinion, it would be the Rabbanan. Rabbanan say no. We dropped Israel, stopped right by that imaginary line from Har Amnain until Nachal Mitzrayim. Gemara says, what do the rabbis do with that pasuk of Hayu Gvul Mayapilei? What do they do with that pasuk that says that the border is the sea, which means that you have to go out? I guess he's translating Yam Hagadol. Is he learning that the Yam HaGadol is the ocean, is the Atlantic, or is he learning that the Yam HaGadol is the Mediterranean? We always understood Yam HaGadol as the
I don't
Mediterranean.
think they went far out.
Huh?
Yeah,
At this point in history, they hadn't been to the Atlantic yet, I don't think.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Until 500 years ago, they figured out they could get to the other side.
Oh, they
How
didn't cross the
How
Atlantic.
far out did they go?
No, but they made it to the
Where?
they were in Spain. I'm sure they weren't people in Spain then.
Yeah, but Spain is not. That's where the Atlantic begins.
Right. But until there would be the border.
As far as these guys were concerned, the Yam was the Mediterranean Sea. That was the biggest ocean they ever seen.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I think.
Okay. So what do they do? What does he do with this extra word of gvul, which Rabbi Yehuda uses to tell me that the border extends all the way to the Atlantic? It says Miboy Leila Nasin, he uses it to tell me, they use it to tell me the islands that are within the area of that imaginary line that goes down from is the Mediterranean. That's automatic. Okay, so that's translated very good. So it's just the extra word that they're using. Use it for the islands. Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't need that extra word to teach me islands. I know that I know what the islands are. If they're in Israel, then fine. And all I needed for is to tell me that it extends all the way through the Mediterranean. Okay. Rabbi Meir Eimer, now we're back to the Mishnah again. Rabbi Meir says, Akku is like Eretz Yisrael. Akku is like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. Now, that means it's only like Israel for Gittin, but it's not really Israel. By my name, Reb Chia Barabba. Reb Chia Barabba asked they asked of Reb Chia Barabba. Reb Chia Barabba is a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Ameicher Abdel Surya. Someone sells his slave. He has a non-Jewish slave, which is a non-Jewish slave is basically Jewish, to keep all the mitzvahs, as if besides for tefillin and whatever, but basically like the mitzvahs that a woman would have to keep. The non-Jewish slave is basically Jewish. Now, were they circumcised? Non-Jewish slave? I don't know. I don't think so. So, is that considered that you sold a slave outside of Israel or not? You sold it to Syria. So our question now is, what is Syria? Is Syria considered Israel or not? Now, the reason why this is a question is because David, Hamelech, conquered Syria, but he conquered it not after he finished conquering the entire land of Israel. We still had pockets in the land of Israel that were not conquered yet. And you were supposed to, if you wanted to expand the borders of Israel, first you had to have Israel proper entirely, and then you could expand it. But because he didn't have all of Israel, he just expanded it. So that was really not an expansion of Israel. That was just a way of getting more taxes. So what is the status of Syria? So the question over here is, since we have a rule that if someone sells a slave outside of Israel, so we make a fine on the purchaser, from Israel to outside, there's a fine that he has to let the slave free. So if he sells it to Syria, we don't want the slave to go out of Israel because he's supposed to be in Israel, because he has to keep the mitzvahs that a regular person has to keep. Okay. So Amalu Tanisua, he says we have a Mishnah. Akku is considered like Israel for Gittin. The Gittin in Lavadam Light, but not for slaves, which means it's considered Chutz La'aretz. Bekolshkin Surya, the Merach Katuva, Surya is even more north. Let's try to go a little further. Tanur Rabbanan. Basically, our answer is that it's considered outside of Israel. Surya is not Israel. There's three ways that Surya is compared to Israel, three ways it's compared to Chutz La'aretz. Siman, Av, Bar, Rak. You'll see in a second, it's going to explain this. Number one, how is it compared to Chutz La'aretz? We're talking about Syria. Afra Tamei Chutz La'aretz. The soil is Tamei, just like it's outside the land of Israel. Anything in the outside of Israel, this Tamei. Someone that sells his slave has the same rule that the slave, there's a fine, a penalty on the purchaser that he has to let the slave free. That's considered outside of Israel. Maybe get me Syria. Someone brings a get from Syria to Israel. It's maybe mechutz la'aretz, as if you brought it from Medina Sayyam, as if you brought it from overseas, from outside of Israel. Shleish Eretz Yisrael, how was it compared to Israel? How was it ruled that it's considered like Israel? Chayevas b'maiser b'shvias Eretz Yisrael. You have the grain that grows there. You have to take meiser, and you have to keep the laws of Shemitah as if it's Eretz Yisrael. Someone that want to enter into their Bitara, there is a possibility of getting their impurity, which we're going to see in a second. A minute ago, we said that the soil is tamei, and now we're saying that it is possible to go there and you're still pure. We'll see in a second. Someone that acquires a field there, he kind of peruri Yerushalayim as if he bought it in the outskirts of Yerushalayim, and we're going to see also what's that relevant for.
So what's the Av bar?
Oh, so the Av was Afra. The Beis is the Avdai. For some reason, you don't want the first one. The next Beis is Mevi, I guess. What's the Reish? Meiser.
Terrible.
Yeah. And Kaina, the last one is Kaina. Right till Kaina. Yeah, we're using, because the problem is you don't want to use the same letter twice, so they start to move into the word. Take a new one. So, because Chayeves b'Maiser v'Shvius Eretz Yisrael, why are we considered in Israel regarding Maiser in Shemitah K'sav Kivish Yachid Shmei Kivish? We're following the opinion that holds that when an individual conquers lands outside of Israel, it's considered like it's conquered, and it's considered part of Israel. This is considered Kivish Yachid because there were still parts of Israel that weren't conquered. Even though it was David, it was the king of Israel, but it's not considered like the Jewish people conquered. It was considered like a private insurgents where they conquered it. We said another halacha is that you can go into Syria and you're still pure. How does that work? You told me before that the soil is tamei. It says no, b'shida teva migdal. We're talking about that you're going there and you're contained in a box. You're going like in a car, or you're going in, people are carrying you. You're not on the ground. The Tanya was taught in a brayso nichnas teretzam b'shida teva migdal. If you go into those lands in a box, you mentioned the plane. So Rebbe Matame, Rebbe says that it's tamei. Rebbe Yisrael the mitar. Rebbe Yisrael says it's tar. But I feel of Rebbe like a matame ala baretz amen. Even Rebbe says that if you're going in a box that you're going to be tamei. That's only the other lands. The Gusha, the Gazra Gusha Valavira, because they made a decree on the soil and on the airspace. Aval Surya al Gusha Gazra Valavira Gazra, but Surya there's only a decree on the soil, not on the airspace. So if you go in a box, you're going to be pure. What does it mean? It's as if you're buying a place in the outskirts of Yerushalayim, if you're buying a property in Syria. Rav Sheshes says, the document that says, the deed that says that you purchased that property, you're allowed to write it even on Shabbos. Buying property in Israel. This is a strong proof that living, even in Syria, this is a strong proof for the mitzvah to buy land in Israel, that it's such a strong mitzvah that you can even violate Shabbos. Now, the Gemara says right away, Shabbos al Kadaitach, you're going to write on Shabbos to write a deed. Kedama Rava, the Gemara says, you can tell a non-Jew to write the deed on Shabbos. You can't really write it on Shabbos. But even that is a big chiddush. You can get a guy to write it because it's mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael to be able to buy it. Hachanami over here also, even though there's a rabbinic law not to tell a Jew, not to tell a non-Jew to do malacha for you on Shabbos, but however, Mishum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael goes Rabbanan, because of the mitzvah to settle the land of Israel by Jewish people, you're allowed to get, you're buying the land from a guy. So then you can get, and the guy is leaving town. So you won't be able to get the deed unless you write it today. So you can tell a non-Jew to write it. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Rabbi.
Yeah.